World leaders and policymakers are descending on Germany for the 61st Munich Security Conference to address what they see as the world's most pressing security concerns. For discussion, topics from reforming governance to climate change and food insecurity. But it's the war in Ukraine that is casting the longest shadow. This week, US President Donald Trump sparked alarm in Kyiv and amongst his European allies, following a call to his Russian counterpart and the announcement of the start of talks to end the conflict. It's raised concerns that Washington will make a deal with Russia, but without including Ukraine or its European allies at the table. The US vice president ahead of the conference in Munich warning Russia that Washington could turn to sanctions if Moscow does not agree to a good peace deal. J.D. Vance expected to meet the Ukrainian president as well today. Volodymyr Zelensky has warned against trusting Vladimir Putin's claims of readiness to end the war. Mr. Vance, meanwhile, says Washington wants NATO to do more to safeguard its own defense, and NATO agrees.
Europe stepping up, the European part of NATO stepping up, you're absolutely right. It has to be done. We have to grow up in that sense and spend much more. We also have to discuss the defense industrial base. Of course, this is a problem we have both in the US and in the rest of NATO. We are simply not producing enough.
Also at the conference, China. Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to deliver a speech in Munich later tonight, laying out Beijing's position on various international issues. CNA's Olivia Siong tells us what we can expect.
The Foreign Ministry did say that Mr. Wang, during his speech, will lay out China's position on major international issues. He's also expected to have meetings on the sidelines of this conference with other counterparts and other leaders, including from the European Union. All this at a time when the U.S. Is seen to be taking a more protectionist approach, and amid those recent comments by the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, saying that the U.S. can't only prioritize Europe's security, but that it also has to look at what China is doing, which it sees as a threat. And if you were to look at Mr. Wang's speech that he made at this same conference last year, it was a rather feisty one in which he warned the West and the U.S. about its red lines with Taiwan, as well as defended China's relationship with Russia. Now, this time round, analysts are saying that when it comes to China's overall posture, when it comes to security or its relations with other countries or on hot topic issues, this is unlikely to change. But what we'll be looking out for is whether there'll be any hints of recalibration on the part of the Chinese in the short term.
Of course, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi will be speaking at the Munich Security Conference, and consternation the last 24 hours, 36 hours over Mr. Trump's phone call with Vladimir Putin, suggesting that a deal might be reached on Ukraine without consulting allies in Europe and Kyiv itself. And for more on this, Trent joins us live. He is in Munich for us. Of course, we've had the response from NATO defense ministers. They say Ukraine and Europe have to be part of any talks to end that war in Ukraine. At Munich, what's the reception likely to be to those latest revelations from the US president?
Well, I think for a lot of the Europeans, they will somewhat be bracing themselves for this speech from Vice President J.D. Vance later today. We certainly are hearing from his team that he will be looking to deliver some quite difficult messages to some of the US's friends and allies, particularly around the question of Ukraine, because we do know, of course, America is the biggest backer of Ukraine, both militarily and also financially. But there is signals coming from the White House that that may now be coming to an end, and that the White House is looking to Europe to do more. I've just got out of a press conference with the German defense minister. Germany is Europe's biggest backer of Ukraine, and certainly the suggestion from him was that that message is now being received loud and clear, and that there needs to be less words and promises made right now and more action. So I think right now, as I say, that call between President Trump and President Putin is certainly casting a shadow over this conference. We do know President Zelensky is here. He will be meeting with J.D. Vance later today. And we understand as part of that conversation, he has prepared a draft proposal for the US on that crucial rare earth metals deal. President Trump is saying he would like Ukraine to hand some of that over to help compensate for all of the billions of dollars which have been spent in military aid.
Trent, of course, Ukraine is just one of several topics. We suggested what else might be on the agenda earlier, for example, climate change and reforming governance. What more and what else can we expect to come out of this year's Munich Security Conference?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Munich Security Conference generally is quite focused on Europe, as you might imagine. But this year, we are seeing more and more countries come, including very large delegations from the Asia Pacific. We, of course, know Wang Yi is here from the People's Republic of China, but we've also got the defense minister here from Singapore, as well as the foreign minister from the Philippines. And so we understand discussions around the Asia Pacific are really going to be front and center in some of the talks tomorrow in particular. And I think that is quite timely because certainly, again, the suggestion from the Americans right now is that their sort of defensive posture and focus is now switching to Asia and some of the kind of hotspots and geopolitical tensions in different parts of our region there. And so whilst on one hand, they are looking to say to the Europeans, look, we are sort of wanting to back off a little bit in terms of our support of Europe, in terms of our vast military expenditure in Europe and focus that on Asia. I think on the other hand, for the Europeans, they are quite keen to probably hear from some of those delegations from the Asia Pacific to see whether there's any sort of opportunity for closer collaboration between Europe and APAC.
We'll be seeing if that pivot does happen or more collaboration in the speeches and meetings that take place over the next few hours. Trent reporting live there from the Munich Security Conference.